The sound of shattering crystal pierced the elegant dining room, followed by my mother's shrill laughter. Not the warm kind, the type that slices through conversation like a blade. I watched my father's face drain of color as the remnants of his vintage wine collection dripped down the cream wallpaper. I'm Katherine, and this was the moment I decided my mother had to pay. Really, Michael? Mother's voice dripped with disdain. You can't even afford to maintain your precious wines properly. Those racks were clearly unstable. She dabbed her napkin delicately at non-existent wine spots on her designer blouse. The entire family sat frozen around the mahogany table. Uncle James, Aunt Patricia, Cousin Sophie, and my brother Tom. Even Emily, Mother's ever-present best friend, seemed uncomfortable. The only movement was the steady crimson stream flowing across the hardwood floor. Father's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his fork. Laura, please, not now. Oh, but when? Mother's eyes glittered dangerously. When should we discuss how you've been lying to everyone about our financial situation? Pretending everything's fine while you're practically begging the bank for extensions. I gripped my knife harder, knuckles white. The metal felt cool against my palm. Mother, Tom started, but she cut him off with a wave. Your father, she announced to the table, has been living beyond his means for years. All those business dinners, client meetings, just desperate attempts to maintain appearances. And now we're all paying the price. Father's shoulders slumped. I'd never seen him look so defeated. This man who'd worked 16-hour days, who'd never missed a single one of my dance recitals, despite his crushing schedule, who still brought Mother flowers every Friday, even after she'd stopped acknowledging them. The country club membership, Mother continued, her voice rising, the summer house, the children's trust funds, all smoke and mirrors. Sophie started crying quietly. Tom reached for her hand under the table. Laura, Emily ventured, maybe this isn't the best time. It's the perfect time. Mother stood, swaying slightly. The wine glass in her hand threatened to spill with each gesture. Everyone should know what a fraud Michael Reynolds really is. I watched Father's face carefully. Each word hit him like a physical blow, but he wouldn't defend himself. He never did. Not against her. The thing about revenge is that it doesn't announce itself with trumpets and lightning. It creeps in during moments like these, when you're watching someone you love being systematically destroyed by someone who promised to love them. I've protected you for too long, Mother declared, covered for your failures, made excuses to our friends. Well, I'm done. That's when I saw it, the slight curl of satisfaction at the corners of her mouth. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst. She'd planned this humiliation, invited the family specifically to witness it. Even the wine rack's collapse seemed suspiciously timed. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound drew everyone's attention, even Mother's. Sit down, Katherine, she snapped. This doesn't concern you, but it did. Every scheme, every manipulation, every calculated cruelty. It had all been building to this moment. I'd spent years watching her orchestrate these little incidents, each one designed to chip away at Father's dignity. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I think it concerns all of us. Mother's eyes narrowed. Don't test me, young lady. Or what? I stepped away from the table. You'll reveal my secrets too? Go ahead. Unlike Father, I don't have anything left to lose. The room fell silent except for the steady drip of wine hitting the floor. Mother and I stared at each other across the ruins of what was supposed to be a family dinner. In her eyes, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. She knew. She knew that I'd finally seen through her carefully constructed facade. And for the first time in my life, I saw my mother for what she truly was. Not an unstoppable force, but a desperate woman clinging to control. I walked out of the dining room that night, leaving behind the wreckage of crystal, wine, and family ties. But I took something with me, a purpose. Mother had spent years crafting her perfect image, building her web of lies and manipulation. Now it was my turn to start weaving. She'd taught me well, after all. Perhaps too well. 3 days after the dinner disaster, I found Mother holding court at Rosewood Country Club. She'd positioned herself perfectly. Center table, afternoon sun casting a golden halo around her carefully styled hair. Emily sat beside her, both of them surrounded by a cluster of society women who hung on Mother's every word. It's been so difficult, Mother dabbed at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Managing everything alone while Michael focuses on his issues. My coffee cup clinked sharply against its saucer. I'd chosen a corner table, hidden behind a large fern, but close enough to hear every perfectly crafted lie. "You're so brave, Laura," one of the women cooed, "and still so generous, hosting the summer benefit despite everything." Emily nodded sympathetically. Laura never lets personal troubles interfere with her charitable work. I nearly laughed. Mother's charitable work mainly involved organizing expensive galas where she could showcase her latest designer purchases and network with potential allies. The actual charities received pittances compared to the event costs. My phone buzzed. "Tom, where are you? Need to talk." "Ladies, if you'll excuse me." Mother stood, smoothing her silk dress. "I have a meeting with the event planner. Emily, would you mind handling the final details?" "Of course, darling." Emily's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Interesting." I waited until Mother left before approaching their table. Emily's face tightened when she saw me. "Katherine, what a surprise." "Emily," I slid into Mother's vacant chair. "Enjoying your role as chief enabler today?" The other women shifted uncomfortably. Emily's laugh was brittle. "I don't know what you mean." "No?" I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. "So these credit card statements showing Mother's shopping sprees using Father's business account, that's not something you've been helping her hide?" Emily's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "Those are private matters between your parents." "Nothing's private when it's fraud, Emily." I kept my voice low, pleasant. "How long have you been helping her doctor the accounts? I should go." Emily gathered her things quickly. "Ladies, excuse me." I watched her practically run from the dining room. The remaining women stared at me, scandalized and intrigued. "Oh, don't let me interrupt your lunch," I smiled. "I'm sure Mother will have a fascinating explanation for everything when she returns." My phone buzzed again. "Tom, seriously, Kath, it's about Mom." I found Tom in the club's library, pacing between leather armchairs. "What's wrong?" "She's selling the summer house." He ran fingers through his hair. "Without telling Dad." "She can't. It's in both their names." She forged his signature on the papers. Tom collapsed into a chair. "I saw them on her desk this morning when I dropped off Sophie. The summer house, where we'd spent every August of our childhood, where Father taught us to sail, where Tom had proposed to Sophie's mother, where I'd... Does Father know?" Tom shook his head. "She's telling everyone he agreed to it, that it's part of their financial restructuring." He made air quotes, face twisted with disgust. "When's the sale supposed to close?" "Next week. Some cash buyer she found through Emily's real estate connections." He looked up at me. "We have to stop her, Kath." I sat down slowly, mind racing. "Maybe we don't." "What?" "Maybe instead of stopping her, we let her hang herself." I leaned forward. "Think about it. Forged documents, fraudulent sale, conspiracy with Emily. That's not just unethical, it's criminal." "You want to let her commit fraud?" "I want to catch her committing fraud, with witnesses, evidence, something she can't talk her way out of." Tom's face paled. "That would destroy her." "She's destroying herself, Tom. We'd just be making sure everyone sees it." He stood abruptly. "I can't be part of this. She's still our mother." "Is she?" I watched him pace again. "When was the last time she acted like one?" Before he could answer, the library door opened. Mother stood there, Emily hovering anxiously behind her. "Well," Mother's voice was ice. "What a cozy little family meeting. Discussing anything interesting?" I met her gaze steadily. "Just catching up. You know how it is. So many secrets to keep track of these days." Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty? Fear? But her smile remained fixed, perfect. "Dinner at home tonight," she announced. "Both of you. No excuses." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Katherine, stay away from Emily. She doesn't need your accusations." After she left, Tom grabbed my arm. "What are you going to do?" I watched Mother's retreating figure through the library windows, already rehearsing her next performance for someone new. Whatever it takes. The bank statements spread across my desk like fallen leaves, each one revealing another piece of Mother's elaborate financial maze. Credit card charges for spa weekends, labeled as business meetings. Cash withdrawals that coincided with her shopping sprees, logged as office supplies. And there, buried in the latest statement, a wire transfer to an offshore account. My new office at Morton & Pierce offered the perfect vantage point for my investigation. Through the glass walls, I watched Daniel approach, 2 coffee cups in hand. "You look like you're planning a murder," he said, setting 1 cup beside me. "Just following the money." I pushed a statement toward him. "See anything interesting?" He studied it, frowning. "These transactions, they're all routed through shell companies." His eyes widened. "Wait, isn't this your father's business account?" Before I could answer, my phone lit up with Tom's face. "Hey, what's—" "She's selling my house." His voice cracked. "The one Sarah and I bought for Sophie." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "What?" "Mom convinced Sarah to sign over her power of attorney last month. Said it was to help with Sophie's college fund." Tom's laugh was hollow. "Now she's liquidating everything, claiming it's to protect us from Dad's financial irresponsibility." Daniel watched me grip the phone tighter. "I'll call you back," I managed. "There's more," Tom said quickly. "Emily came to see me. She's scared, Kath. Says Mum's been having her falsify documents for years. Bank records, property deeds." "Where are you?" "Home. Sophie's at school." "Stay there." I stood, gathering the statements. "And Tom, don't tell Mother you talked to me." Daniel followed me to the elevator. "You're not going alone." "I have to. This is family. Exactly why you shouldn't face it alone." He held the elevator door. "Besides, you might need a witness." The drive to Tom's house was silent except for the rustle of papers as Daniel reviewed more statements. Finally, he spoke. "Your mother's not just manipulating people. She's committing serious fraud." "I know." "Then why haven't you—" "Because prison's too easy." I turned onto Tom's street. "She needs to lose everything she values first. Her reputation, her social standing, her control." Emily's car sat in Tom's driveway, its driver's door still open. Inside, voices echoed from the kitchen. "You promised!" Emily's voice shook. "You said this was just about protecting the family assets." "It is." Mother's tone was silk over steel. "And you're going to help me finish it unless you want everyone to know about those irregularities in your real estate licenses." I stepped into the doorway. "What irregularities would those be, Mother?" She spun around, face composed except for a slight twitch near her left eye. "Katherine, what a surprise." "Is it?" I moved closer, Daniel a steady presence behind me. "Or did you expect me once you started targeting Tom? I'm protecting your brother from your father's mistakes." She smiled at Tom, who stood pale and rigid by the sink. "Someone has to think about this family's future. By stealing his house? By threatening Emily?" "Threatening?" Mother laughed. "Emily and I are dear friends, aren't we, Emily?" Emily stared at her hands. "Laura, please, this isn't what we discussed. What we discussed doesn't matter anymore." Mother's voice hardened. "What matters is loyalty. Something my children seem to have forgotten." "Loyalty?" I pulled out my phone, scrolling through documents. "Like the loyalty you showed Father when you started embezzling from his company, or when you forged his signature on loan applications." Her composure cracked slightly. "You've been spying on me." "No, Mother. I've been watching you destroy our family for years. Now I'm finally doing something about it." She moved suddenly, reaching for my phone. Daniel stepped between us. "That's enough, Laura. he said quietly. Mother's eyes narrowed. And who exactly are you? Someone who's seen enough evidence to know you're in serious trouble. She looked around the kitchen, at Tom's distress, Emily's fear, my determination. For a moment, something like uncertainty crossed her face. Then she smiled, reaching for her purse. Well, this has been enlightening. Tom, darling, we'll discuss the house later. Emily, I expect those papers by tomorrow. If you touch Tom's house, I said as she reached the door, I'll release everything. Every transaction, every forged document, every threat. She paused, hand on the doorknob. You wouldn't dare destroy this family. You already have. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's responsible. After she left, Emily broke down, confessing everything. Tom paced, processing the revelations. Daniel quietly documented it all. And I finally saw the path forward clearly. Mother had taught me well about masks and manipulation. Now it was time to put those lessons to use. Daniel's apartment became our war room, walls covered with financial records and sticky notes mapping Mother's web of deception. 3 weeks of late nights had revealed a pattern more intricate than I'd imagined. Look at this. Daniel pointed to a series of transactions. Every major withdrawal coincides with a deposit into Emily's account, then gets redistributed to these shell companies. I traced the money trail with my finger. She's been planning this for years. Planning what? To make Father look incompetent. Each failed investment, every poor business decision, she orchestrated all of it. My phone buzzed. Father's name lit up the screen. Katherine. His voice sounded tired. Are you busy? 20 minutes later, I found him in his office, surrounded by empty boxes. The nameplate on his desk, Michael Reynolds, CEO, lay face down. The board voted this morning, he said without looking up, effective immediately. My throat tightened. They can't do that. You built this company. With fraudulent loans, apparently. He finally met my eyes. Did you know? About what? Your mother's activities. He pushed a folder across the desk. The board received these anonymously. Inside were copies of loan applications, all bearing his forged signature. But something was wrong. The dates, the amounts, they didn't match my research. These are fake, I said. They're very real. He rubbed his face. Laura admitted everything when they confronted her. Said she was trying to save the company from my mismanagement. My phone buzzed again. Tom. Mom's calling everyone. Says Dad embezzled millions. People are believing her. She's lying, I told Father. I can prove it. It doesn't matter anymore. He stood, starting to pack his desk. The damage is done. I drove straight to Daniel's, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. He opened the door before I could knock. Your mother just called the office, he said. She's telling everyone you're father. I know. I pushed past him to our evidence wall. But these dates are wrong. She's created a whole new narrative. How? Emily. I yanked down several documents. She didn't just help Mother hide money. She helped her create a paper trail framing Father. Daniel caught my arm as I reached for more papers. Kathy, stop. Think. Why now? Because... I froze, realization hitting like ice water. The charity gala. She's hosting it next week. At the country club, Daniel nodded, where everyone who matters will be watching. She's not just destroying Father's reputation. My laugh sounded hollow. She's going to play the victim in front of the entire social circle. The loyal wife who discovered her husband's betrayal. My phone lit up with messages. Society friends expressing shock and sympathy, all to Mother. Board members distancing themselves from Father. Even Tom's in-laws were questioning their connection to our family. She's winning, I whispered. Daniel studied the evidence wall. Maybe not. Look at the real timeline we've built. If we could prove these new documents are forgeries, we'd need Emily's help. I pulled out my phone. And she's terrified of Mother. Then we give her something more terrifying. Daniel grabbed his laptop. Your mother's not the only one who can create a paper trail. I watched him work, something cold settling in my chest. You want to threaten Emily? I want to give her a choice. He turned the screen toward me. Between your mother's threats and actual proof of her own crimes, the document he'd created detailed every fraudulent transaction Emily had processed, every false document she'd notarized, enough to end her career, possibly send her to prison. This makes us just like her, I said quietly. No. Daniel closed the laptop. It makes us better players at her game. My phone buzzed one final time. Mother. Darling, I need you at the gala planning meeting tomorrow. Time to show everyone how our family handles crisis with grace. I stared at the message, remembering every lesson she'd taught me about manipulation and control, about using people's fears against them, about winning at any cost. Make the call to Emily, I told Daniel. He hesitated. Are you sure? I looked at Father's nameplate, which I'd taken from his desk, at the evidence of Mother's betrayal surrounding us, at the years of calculated destruction she'd orchestrated. Mother always said I was just like her. I picked up my phone. Time to prove her right. Emily's hand shook as she slid the USB drive across the cafe table. Everything's here. Transaction records, forged documents, even Laura's private emails. She glanced nervously over her shoulder. If she finds out, she won't. I pocketed the drive. Unless you tell her. You don't understand. She's planning something big for the gala. Something about Sophie. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. What about Sophie? I overheard her on the phone. She's using Tom's custody agreement against him. Said something about proving Sarah unfit. The cup clattered against the saucer. Of course, Mother would target Sophie, the one person Tom would sacrifice everything to protect. My phone buzzed. Daniel, your mother just called a board meeting, emergency session. I have to go. I stood, leaving cash for the coffee. Remember our deal, Emily? One word to Mother. I know. She wouldn't meet my eyes. The evidence goes public. The elevator ride to the boardroom felt endless. Through the glass walls, I could see Mother holding court, dressed impeccably in pearl grey. The perfect grieving wife. Katherine. She smiled as I entered. Perfect timing. I was just explaining the new company structure. The board members avoided my gaze. Chairman Wilson cleared his throat. Given the circumstances, we feel it's best to implement immediate changes. Changes? I scanned the room. Where's Tom? Your brother has taken a leave of absence. Mother's voice carried just the right note of concern. The stress of your father's actions has been difficult for him. Lies. Tom would never abandon the company voluntarily, unless... My phone vibrated. Tom. Mom has proof Sarah relapsed, says she'll use it unless I step down. The board has appointed me interim CEO, Mother continued smoothly, to restore stability and trust. The room spun slightly. All those years of careful planning, of gathering evidence, she'd outmaneuvered us again. Congratulations, I managed. I'm sure Father would be proud. Her smile flickered. Speaking of your father, he's agreed to seek treatment. The strain of his financial improprieties clearly affected his judgment. Treatment. She'd somehow convinced him to admit himself to a facility, to complete her narrative of the troubled businessman who'd lost his way. Chairman Wilson stood. We'll release a statement this afternoon. Katherine, given your position and family connection, we think it's best if you take some time off as well. Of course. I gathered my things, feeling Mother's triumphant gaze. I wouldn't want to compromise the company's recovery. Daniel was waiting in my office. How bad? She's won. I sank into my chair. The company, Tom's position, Sophie's custody, she's taking everything. Not yet. He pulled out his laptop. The USB from Emily. I handed it over, watching him work. After a moment, he turned the screen toward me. Look at these timestamps. The documents framing your father. They were created after he was forced out. She's getting sloppy. It doesn't matter. I gestured at the empty office. She has control now. Then we move up the timeline. Daniel leaned forward. The gala's tomorrow night. Every major player in town will be there, including the DA's office. You want to expose her publicly? I want to give her exactly what she wants, all eyes on her perfect performance. Then we show everyone who she really is. My phone lit up with a text from Sophie. Dad's acting weird. Grandma says we're moving to the summer house. What's happening? The summer house, where Mother could isolate them, control the narrative completely. If we do this, I said slowly, there's no going back. The company, our reputation, the family, everything changes. It's already changed. Daniel's hand covered mine. The question is, who controls the ending? I thought of Father, alone in some facility, of Tom, sacrificing his career for Sophie, of every calculated move Mother had made to build her empire of lies. The gala starts at 8, I said. We'll need Emily's help one more time. She might run. No. I pulled up Mother's latest email, an invitation to join her at the head table tomorrow night, the prodigal daughter returning to support her family. She'll do exactly what Mother taught us both to do. Which is? I showed him my RSVP. Looking forward to celebrating with you, Mother. You deserve everything that's coming. She'll wait for the perfect moment to strike. The country club ballroom glittered like a jewel box, but all I could see was Mother's reflection, multiplied in every mirror, each version of her more perfect than the last. She stood at the podium, resplendent in black silk, addressing the crowd with practiced grief. In times of crisis, family is everything. Her voice caught perfectly. Though Michael's actions have shocked us all, we must focus on healing. Daniel's hand brushed mine under the table. The USB drive felt heavy in my clutch. One presentation, already loaded onto the club's system, waiting for Emily's signal. Where's Tom? I whispered. Still not here. Daniel checked his phone. No response. Mother continued. As the new CEO of Reynolds Industries, I promised to restore not just our company's reputation, but our family's legacy. The audience applauded. I scanned the crowd, board members, society matrons, even the district attorney, all hanging on her performance. But no Emily. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. Check your email, now. The attachment showed Sophie and Tom at the summer house, timestamp from an hour ago. Below it, a message. Mother knows. They're safe. Stay away. Emily's not coming. My voice sounded distant. Mother has them. Daniel started to stand. We can still... Ladies and gentlemen, Mother's voice cut through the murmur. I'd like to invite my daughter Katherine to say a few words about family, about truth. The spotlight found me. Hundreds of eyes turned, expecting the dutiful daughter's support of her brave mother. I rose slowly, each step toward the podium feeling like moving through water. Mother's smile never wavered, but her eyes were arctic. I've learned so much about family recently, I began. The prepared speech felt like ashes in my mouth. About loyalty, about consequences. Mother's smile tightened fractionally. In the crowd, I spotted the DA leaning forward. My mother. I stopped, seeing Tom's face in my mind, Sophie's future hanging by a thread. Go on, darling. Mother touched my arm, her fingers like steel. Tell them what you've discovered. The USB drive weighed 1,000 pounds. Every piece of evidence, every carefully gathered proof of her crimes, useless against her final manipulation. My mother has shown incredible strength, I heard myself say. Taking control of the company, protecting our family's interests while Father recovers. The words tasted like poison. Mother's grip relaxed slightly. I know there have been rumors, I continued. Questions about certain financial decisions. Daniel stood abruptly, but I couldn't look at him. I want to clarify that any irregular transactions were authorized by my father. Mother simply tried to hide them, to protect him, to protect all of us. The lie hung in the air like smoke. Mother's smile widened triumphantly. Thank you, Katherine. She embraced me, whispering, Sophie will be so relieved. The rest of the evening blurred. I watched Mother accept condolences, praise for her resilience. Watched the DA leave, satisfied there was no story here. Watched my chance at justice evaporate like morning dew. Daniel found me on the terrace, staring at nothing. She won, I said before he could speak. She finally taught me what family really means. Kathy, it means knowing exactly where to put the knife. I pulled out my phone, showing him the summer house photo. She knew. All along, she knew what we were planning, and she made sure I knew the cost of betrayal. We can find another way. There is no other way. I deleted the presentation file, then dropped the USB drive into my champagne glass. She'll always be one step ahead, holding someone I love hostage. So you're giving up? No. I watched the champagne fizz around the sinking drive. I'm accepting that she won, that she'll always win. Mother appeared in the doorway, radiant in victory. Katherine, the board members would love to hear more about your new role in the company. I stood, smoothing my dress. Of course, Mother. That's my girl. She touched my cheek, her fingers still cold. You see? Family always comes first. As I followed her inside, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the terrace doors. Mother and daughter, perfectly matched in black, perfectly poised. I couldn't tell which of us was the better liar anymore. The summer house stood dark against the twilight sky, its windows like empty eyes. I found Mother in Father's study, methodically feeding documents into a shredder. I wondered when you'd come. She didn't look up. Tom and Sophie left an hour ago. You just missed them. I know, I sent them away. That made her pause. Did you? Emily helped. I moved closer, watching paper disappear into mechanical teeth. She's quite cooperative when she's not terrified. Emily's loyalty was always negotiable. Mother smiled thinly. Unlike yours, apparently. You taught me well. I picked up a half-shredded document. A familiar signature caught my eye. Not Father's forgery, but the original. Though I learned some lessons you didn't intend. Such as, always keep copies. I pulled out my phone, showing her the screen. Everything you're destroying, already uploaded to the cloud and to the DA's office. The shredder whirred to a stop. Mother's fingers tightened on its edge. You're bluffing. Like you bluffed about Sophie, about Tom's custody battle. I stepped closer. There was no evidence against Sarah, was there? Just another manipulation. I did what was necessary. She straightened, smoothing her blazer. To protect this family. No. The word felt like breaking glass. You did what was necessary to protect your control. There's a difference. Control is protection. Her voice hardened. Look what happened when your father lost control. When you tried to take it from me. I learned from the best. I moved to the window, watching shadows lengthen across the lawn. Did you ever wonder why I gave up so easily at the gala? Something flickered in her reflection. Uncertainty? You understood the consequences. I understood the opportunity. I turned back to her. Everyone watching you win. Everyone seeing you at your most triumphant. Your perfect moment. What have you done? Check your phone, Mother. The board's probably trying to reach you. She grabbed her phone, fingers trembling slightly as she scrolled. With each message, her face grew paler. Anonymous tips. My voice stayed steady. Bank records, witness statements, all pointing to your masterful takeover of the company. Your brilliant manipulation of Father's downfall. They'll never believe. They already do. That's what happens when you craft such a perfect narrative. People want to believe the bigger story. The phone slipped from her hand. You're just like me, she whispered. That's what makes this work. I picked up her phone, showing her the growing cascade of messages. I learned from you that revenge isn't about destruction. It's about precision. I'll fight this. With what allies? Emily's testimony is already recorded. Tom's safe with Sophie, beyond your reach. Even your social circle is turning. Amazing how quickly sympathy becomes scandal. She moved suddenly, reaching for the desk drawer where she kept her emergency files. I caught her wrist. Looking for these? I held up a key. Daniel cleared those out hours ago. while you were busy watching me. Katherine, her voice cracked slightly. I'm your mother. Yes. I released her wrist. That's why I'm giving you a choice. Something you never gave any of us. Her eyes narrowed. What choice? Resign quietly. Disappear to that villa in France you bought with father's money. Or stay and fight. Watch everything you built crumble piece by piece. You wouldn't dare destroy this family's reputation. You already did that. I walked to the door. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's responsible. Katherine, her command voice, the one that used to make me freeze. Don't you walk away from me. I paused, hand on the doorknob. That's the difference between us, Mother. I learned how to walk away. You never could. I made you who you are. No. I looked back one last time. You showed me who I didn't want to become. The study door closed behind me with a soft click. Through it, I heard something shatter. A paperweight, maybe, or her carefully constructed world. Outside, Daniel waited in the car. Is it done? I watched lights begin to flicker on in the summer house windows, like stars emerging in a dark sky. Mother would be getting more calls soon, more messages, more consequences. Yes, I said, it's done. We drove away as night fell, leaving Mother alone with the ghosts of her machinations. I didn't look back. She'd taught me that too. Never show weakness in victory. Some lessons stick, even when we don't mean them to. The French villa's gates opened silently, revealing manicured gardens bathed in Mediterranean sunshine. Mother's new sanctuary, bought with the remnants of her carefully hidden assets. She waited in the courtyard, thinner than I remembered, but still elegant in cream linen. 6 months hadn't dimmed her ability to command a space. Katherine, she gestured to a table set for tea. I wasn't sure you'd come. Neither was I. I remained standing. Father's awake. The doctors say he'll make a full recovery. From the breakdown I orchestrated. Her smile was bitter. How charitable of them. He's taking back the company. Tom's helping him rebuild. And you? She poured tea with steady hands. Still playing vigilante with Daniel? Actually, I'm here about Sophie. I watched her fingers tighten on the porcelain. She's graduating next month. Wants her grandmother there. After everything you've done, after everything you did, I finally sat, meeting her gaze. Sophie doesn't know the whole story. That's her gift to you. The choice is yours. Mother set down her cup. You've gotten better at manipulation. I had an excellent teacher. Yes. Something flickered in her eyes. Pride, regret. Though I never expected you to surpass me. Didn't you? Isn't that what you trained us for? To be perfect reflections of your ambition? She stood abruptly, moving to the garden's edge. I wanted you to be strong, to never need anyone's approval. While demanding our absolute loyalty, protection requires control. No, I joined her at the balustrade. Protection requires trust, something you never learned. Below us, gardeners tended Mother's immaculate roses. Everything perfectly ordered, perfectly controlled, even in exile. I received your wedding invitation, she said quietly. Did you burn it like the others? I kept it, she turned, studying my face. You look happy, despite everything, not despite, because. I touched the balustrade's sun-warmed stone. You taught me what to avoid becoming. That's worth something. Such a diplomatic way to thank me for being a cautionary tale. Would you prefer I thanked you for showing me how power corrupts, or how loyalty can become poison? Her laugh held no humor. Still so righteous, so certain of your moral high ground. No, I met her gaze steadily. Just certain that there are better ways to love. Love, she spat the word like venom. Love is weakness. I made you strong. You made me afraid. There's a difference. Inside the villa, a phone rang. Mother tensed, old habits dying hard, always waiting for the next crisis, the next battle. Sophie's graduation is on the 15th, I said, turning to leave. There's a ticket to Nice in the invitation, If you want it. Katherine, her voice stopped me. Do you ever wonder if you're becoming me? Using people's weaknesses, manipulating outcomes? Every day. I look back. That's what makes me different. I choose not to. Choice is an illusion we create to feel better about our nature. Maybe I reach the courtyard gate, or maybe it's the only thing that separates us from our worst instincts. Will you come back? The question held an unfamiliar note, uncertainty. That depends. On what? On whether you're ready to be a mother instead of a puppet master. I left her there, framed by roses and regret, her tea growing cold on the table. Daniel waited in the rental car, asking nothing but holding my hand as we drove away. My phone buzzed with a message from Sophie. Did she say yes? I watched Mother's villa disappear in the rearview mirror, thinking of choices and consequences, of love and control, of the fine line between protection and possession. We'll see, I typed back, because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying someone's world, but in letting them glimpse a better one, and leaving them to decide if they're brave enough to change. Mother had taught me that too, though she never meant to. Some lessons cut deeper than others, leaving scars that shape us into something stronger than steel, more resilient than pride, something like hope